Welcome back to Inside City Hall. In less than 2 months, there will be several new faces at the City Council. On Election Day, my next guest, Democrat Kayla Santosuosso, defeated her Republican opponent with 59% of the vote in a closely watched contest to succeed term-limited Councilmember Justin Brannan. Come January, Santosuosso will represent neighborhoods in South Brooklyn, including Bay Ridge and Bath Beach, Dyker Heights, and Coney Island. Councilmember-elect Kayla Santosuosso joins me now to talk about her victory and her plans for office. Welcome to the program and congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
This has been a swing district for many, many years. And there are Assembly and State Senate districts that overlap with this district that have voted Republican in recent years. Why do you think this worked out for you this time?
We made an effort to try to communicate to voters across the political spectrum about local issues and focus on things that we thought would appeal to everybody. And those were things like affordability, safety, street safety especially, strong schools, clean parks and clean streets and sidewalks. So I think we just had the appeal, and I think we were able to also successfully convince voters that this is a moment when you really want experienced people in your local government seats. And because I've worked for the existing council member and because I'm a lawyer and have also ran a nonprofit and owned a small business, I'm uniquely prepared for the job, and I think voters appreciated that.
On affordability in particular, what did you promise? What do you plan to do as a council member?
The number one priority is really universal child care, and specifically from ages 0 to 2. We heard on a lot of doors that we had parents that were struggling to meet those child care costs. It can really run an extra rent payment for most families, and so we were seeing families, especially in Bay Ridge, that were getting priced out and moving away because they couldn't afford that child care. So, I'm not the only one calling for this, of course, so I enter a council and I think to some extent into a city with a mayoral administration and a governor's office that recognizes that this is a need. So
you mentioned doors. It sounds like you did a lot of door knocking.
I sure did.
Yeah, and maybe, but to describe that, because even at this late date, there are a lot of political candidates who go out there and they think, well, I'll drop some mail, I'll make some appearances, I'll show up at the local clubs. What do you get by door knocking that you can't get any other way?
First of all, I think you get the real temperature check on what people are concerned about. I'm lucky, I get that through working at the council member's office, but you start to go out there and you talk to utter strangers and see what's on their minds, and honestly, that really informs the direction that we take with campaigns and with our priorities. I also think it really gets people to know who you are and what you're about. There's only so much that a mail piece or a media appearance can do, but once I'm in front of someone and talking to them about how I could respond to their specific concern, I think that makes a difference.
And council district, while big, it's not an insurmountable task, right?
No, but requires a lot of work. Yeah. So I got used to not having a life for pretty much 7 months, yeah.
Your Republican opponent outraised you, actually, in campaign contributions.
Yeah, not by much, but I think he did with private funds a bit.
Okay.
Yeah,
and you had matching funds, though?
I did, yes. Okay. We both did, yeah.
So you're going to make history as the first woman to represent Bay Ridge in the city council.
That's right.
And it's the majority woman council for the second time.
That's right.
Is that important in this moment?
Yeah, I think it is. First of all, just a little bit of history for Bay Ridge. I'm certainly not the first woman to run or to try, but I think voters were really excited this time around to see a fresh face and to see a woman entering in, particularly when we're talking about things like childcare, particularly when we're talking about protecting reproductive rights amidst sort of attacks on the federal administration. So I think that mattered to voters. I'm happy to be in this role. Yeah.
You mentioned public safety as one of the other issues people are concerned about. What's your plan for the district?
Yeah, so I work with the precincts every day, working for Councilmember Brannan now, and I think it's clear that the precincts are really sort of bogged down by a lot of things that they don't really have control over. So a couple things. One, I'm really encouraged by the creation of these Q teams, the quality of life teams that are responding to these quality of life issues that lead to larger public safety issues if left unchecked. They're doing a great job, and this is especially true with things like mopeds on our sidewalks and irresponsible driving. So that's great. And I'm encouraged with the new administration, hopefully the idea that we can maybe remove some of the harder to solve issues that maybe don't necessarily belong in the everyday work of the NYPD, so that they can focus on, investigating crime, preventing crime in the first place.
What committees do you want to serve on, and why?
Definitely parks. We have a ton of green spaces in southern Brooklyn. We're very lucky in that way. But there's two issues within parks I want to focus on. One is I want to be able to build more safe, clean, and usable bathrooms in our public parks. I think that's an accessibility issue, a family issue. But it's extremely expensive to do that. So I want to get at the root of why that is and how we can kind of expedite some of that. Yeah. And the second thing is forestry, which is a division of parks that oversees so much of our street tree planting and care. When I was at the law department, I saw how many lawsuits arise from these sidewalk flags that are lifted by tree roots. I watch constituents who are having issues with the trees adjacent to their homes that never get pruned and they have to wait for years at a time. So it seems like it's underfunded, under-resourced, but we might have to rework some of the ways that division is set up, and I want to get into that. I also want to be on sanitation to get at the bottom of why our streets and sidewalks are dirtier than they were pre-pandemic. So
I have spent some time down there. Like a lot of other people, there were years where I had to keep going to the dentist, and they're all down there. They're all down there.
Doctor's row, dentist row, yeah.
Yes. But let me ask you this: when it comes to development, housing development, there's been a big controversy in the City Council. There was the passage of these charter amendments specifically because the need to increase supply has got to be part of the conversation. How will that play out in your district?
Yeah, so, and we have to keep in mind our district spans from Bay Ridge to Coney Island. And in some ways, the housing challenges are different, sort of as you travel.
High rises in Coney Island.
That's right.
Lower density.
And I think Councilmember Brannan in particular has done a pretty good job in the last couple of years of trying to build more affordable housing, particularly on the Coney Island side. I think it was something like 700 apartments this year alone. So we are doing more of that. In Bay Ridge, of course, there's kind of less space in general. But I've always been someone who recognizes that, look, we are in an affordability crisis moment, right? We have a historically low vacancy rate. We should build where it makes sense to build and without fundamentally changing the character of the neighborhood. It's still unclear to me if our district is actually going to be included in those 12 that are going to be affected by, the ballot proposal 2 that passed. But if so, I just want to be able to still use my bully pulpit and my voice and work with the City Planning Commission and the entities that be to say, look, we want housing that people can afford in our district. Let's just make sure it's going, where it makes sense.
I mean, part of what happens is districts like, at least on the Bay Ridge side, that have been lower density, developers get the message over the years and they don't even think about approaching you. Some may approach you now with some ideas about perhaps upzoning or using certain parcels for development, right?
Yeah, and I think Bay Ridge people know that there are areas where it does make sense. We have 4th Avenue, which is really dense. We can't forget that Bay Ridge is home to some of, a large stock of rent-stabilized housing units, and tall buildings and areas, I think, that are industrial where it would make sense to build. So I'm not someone that's categorically against building at all. I just want to make sure, it doesn't totally compromise the character of the neighborhood.
Okay. Now, in our last minute, your first vote will be the most important one. Who do you plan to support for Speaker of the Council? Yeah,
we're lucky. I think we have an embarrassment of riches right now in terms of candidates. And I think it's important to me that it be a woman, particularly because it's the second time around that we're in a woman majority council. I'm confident we're going to be in good hands no matter who we end up with.
Okay, I didn't hear a name though.
Not quite yet. Haven't committed. I'm still an uncommitted person. Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much for coming by. Congratulations
Of course. Thank
again.
you for having me. Thank you.